One of the major draws of video games as a whole is getting lost inside of the world that is created and being able to live out a fantasy that you would never be able to in real life. You get to feel like you are playing a part in what happens to these places and characters that after time you grow to love and get attached to. You want to get engrossed into this world and help out in any way you can to finish a quest that wasn't just thrust upon the main character, but to you, the player. This feeling is shown perfectly in turn-based JRPGs. JRPGs are, by definition, role-playing games. They accentuate this feeling of being a part of a world and growing with these characters, while you yourself are filling a role. The worlds in these games are vast and expansive. Characters have insane depth, stories are grand, atmosphere is top-notch, enemies are varied and interesting, and most importantly, the music is almost always filled with straight fucking bangers. Well, except for Chrono Cross. That shit is straight up fucking garbaggio. With all these amazing qualities in these games, the one point of contention that always seems to come up is the combat. Now, in case you're the type of person who, sniffed a little too much of that Elmer's glue when they were younger and already forgot the fucking title of the video,
and breathe in like that.
the type of JRPG combat we're going to be talking about here is turn-based combat. Turn-based combat is divisive, to say the least. On the one hand, you have people who swear by it, saying that's the way that all these games were meant to be played, while others will say it's an outdated mechanic that has no place in modern games. The thing is, I love turn-based combat. But sadly, the opposite opinion is starting to become more and more prominent.
Turn-based combat is fucking boring, tedious, and draining. It is the opposite of fun.
Hell, even Square Enix, the fucking pioneers of this gameplay, are now too fucking scared to put turn-based combat back into their flagship franchise, Final Fantasy. And you know what? That's a fucking shame, since turn-based combat has a lot of merit that many detractors refuse to acknowledge or even try to understand. And that's the topic of the video. Why exactly turn-based combat is fun. Oh, and side note, this is not the nostalgia speaking. I was the kid that grew up on the Call of Duters and the Halo Snores, so I don't really have the reference frame of these games in my childhood. So take that rebuttal and shove it straight up your fucking disgusting leaky ass! So to start off, we're going to be talking about the baseline mechanics of the genre. You usually run into an enemy in some sort of dangerous area where you are suddenly thrust into a battle against a big disgusto snail or some shit. Gary, come home. Here is where 100% of your combat takes place, in this one menu. On average, you'll have the option to attack, maybe a couple magic spells, the ability to use items, and flee. Now on paper, this seems like big boy snooze time, and that's understandable. But as time goes on, you start to notice that different enemies are resilient to different things. Your basic attack that you've been using since the beginning of the game doesn't really do that much damage to this ugly muck pile over here. So you think about using fire. Then you use the spell and it does a shit ton of damage to the guy, so you feel good. But then you realize, you now used up your fucking MP. This is where the core challenge comes from in RPGs. Resource management. It is literally impossible to never get hit in an RPG, so that means you are constantly having your health and resources whittled down. The actual fun of the combat comes from finding different ways to end the battles quicker while also using less resources. This is perfectly shown in one of the most common enemy types in JRPGs, the multiple low health enemy type. So let's walk through this bitch step by step.
Okay.
Now in this fight, you could individually take out the enemies one by one, and it'll get the job done enough, but this makes it 100% certain that they will be able to attack you and chip away some of your health. And that sucks the big knob. So, instead of losing any health, you decide to use a multi-target attack that kills them all in one hit, while also depleting some of your mana in the process. That could potentially suck an even bigger knob in the future. This is where the risk versus reward and strategy comes from in these games. Neither option is 100% correct when you encounter this enemy. It comes down to which resource you are more willing to deplete at the time. And this doesn't even take into account the chances of you missing, causing the battle to last even longer and losing even more resources. Good turn-based combat constantly throws these differing scenarios at you, causing you, the player, to always be thinking about how you should tackle a certain battle. Sure, it may not be the most brain-taxing thing of all time, but that's where the boss battles come in. Now, what I'm about to say may in fact ruin all future turn-based games for you. And if that happens, I'm not sorry, get fucked, bitch! But the whole point of random encounters is to whittle away your resources so you are weakened for the boss. The random enemies aren't necessarily meant to kill you, as most people don't die to the random encounter, and if you do, you fucking suck. So that means you get your main challenge from the bosses. Since you just powered through 17 million battles against the diaper trash mobs, the big boss boy is gonna be a bit rougher now that your supplies are low. Bosses have a shit ton of health, while also dealing a shit ton of damage. This means that instead of choosing between having your mana or HP depleted like in every other random encounter, both are going to be constantly at stake. If you don't use any mana in these fights, you will run out of HP and die. If you use too much mana, you will also run out and die. Same goes with using too many items in place of mana. Everything is limited, and it adds a whole new level of strategy to the combat. Now you have to combine both solutions into one condensed fight. This also means that the core gameplay of finding the enemy's weakness is even more crucial during this fight. You want to dispose of the boss as quickly as possible. This is where a lot of the fun comes from in these games, learning the weaknesses of the specific boss and finding out how to exploit it. One of my favorite examples of a great JRPG boss would be from one of my favorite RPGs of all time, Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story.
I was like, pop, pop, and then they'd be like, oh no, I was like, oh yes, pop, 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 and then pop.
If you don't know the plot of this game, basically this green fuckleston forces Bowser to literally vor Mario and Luigi. I'm not making that up, that's really what happens. It says it in the fucking manual. So that means the game is broken up into two segments. One where you are Bowser fighting in the real world, and one where you are Mario and Luigi fighting Bowser's sperm. Now the fight I'm talking about is the final boss of the game. Basically, it is split into two parts. The first part is you fighting in the outside world against fucking Bowser's stand until you deal enough damage to be able to literally suck out this motherfucker's heart. Then, Bowser bores the heart and you suddenly take control of Mario and Luigi fighting it. Now the part that makes it really cool is that if you just go for the heart's body, you will do almost nothing to it as it can heal up. Instead, you must take it out one limb at a time until you just have Falfo's big fat ugly face left. That is where you can do the final blow to the heart and win the fight. This fight is just so fucking rad because of all the layers to it. You need to do enough damage to the first form, then figure out how you have to suck him off, and then figure out how to damage the heart. It's all just so fun and engaging. Most JRPGs actually have bosses like these that are more than just smack that boy until he's dead. Congrats, fuckboy, you win! I personally like how Persona 5 does the Kamoshida fight, where once you do enough damage, you can allow Morgana to take multiple turns to do a special sneak attack. This has some risk to it because the attack can actually fail, but you are also down one party member for a couple of turns. But if you strap on those gamer glasses, buckle down, and actually try and survive the 3 turns, then Morgana will stun the boss, and you can actually proceed to win the battle. That is the type of shit I love about bosses in these games, how they actually make you think about what you are doing. And while we are talking about specific games, let's talk about how each one differentiates itself from each other. A lot of the time, when someone tries to criticize turn-based JRPGs for being too similar or unengaging, they are probably thinking about the really old classic games that don't really have too much to them. And you know what? If they don't enjoy the combat to those really early games, that's completely understandable. You think I enjoy Earthbound Beginnings? Fuck no, that shit is bad. Games like that have a lot of dated design philosophies with grinding, basic battles, and random encounters where I'm just walking and then all of a sudden, big fucko appears and he's like, hi, I'm gonna fucking bite you. Saying that all JRPGs are shit based off of their old design philosophies is like saying that all action games are doo-doo ass farts because of how boring the combat is in Drakengard 1, Nier, hell, fucking Devil May Cry 1. That game literally invented the character action genre and is a really good game, but shit, don't deny, it has a lot of archaic design choices that turns a lot of people off. Since Devil May Cry 1 was literally the first game in its genre, it's pretty dated by today's standards. Does that mean that you're not allowed to enjoy it and you can't get fun out of it? No! I love Devil May Cry 1. It's a fucking great game. However, games evolve over time and they innovate, making them more palatable and most importantly fun. We shouldn't automatically discredit an entire genre because of that. So to further illustrate that point, I'm going to go over some RPGs that heavily evolve their turn-based combat to make it, you know, fucking fun. Isn't that right, Earthbound Beginnings? You suck! First off, we have Final Fantasy X. This is a game where you have a party of 7 members, where you can swap each character in and out during battle. And you wanna know what seems so small and so inconsequential, but is the best fucking thing ever? It doesn't take a turn! Thank God! Now, if you haven't played a turn-based game, I don't think you realize how insane this is. This gives you so much freedom in battles and allows you to strategize and plan so adequately, it's staggering. I love that shit so much, and I could talk about FF10's battle system for hours, but we gotta move on.
So the
Oh no! The race war starts now!
Next up, we've got Chrono Trigger. Now, other than the fact that it takes random encounters and yeets it out the fucking window, you also have a battle system where positioning matters. This means you have to take into account where each party member is in relation to the enemies and how wide of an effect your attacks will have. It makes you actually think, and I know that may seem intimidating to some of you, but trust me, you'll be fine. You gotta use that noggin sometimes, you know? After that, we have Persona 5. Now, I can't speak for the other games in the series, but Persona 5 really knows how to get me all hot and bothered with its combat. What makes this combat fun is that the weaknesses each enemy has is essential to the combat. When you find out the enemy's weakness and use it on them, you stun them, gain another turn, and do that big boy damage. This mechanic is so fun. It makes battles most enjoyable when you're trying to perfect them. Oh, and what's that? A style that is flashy and orgasmic while also having a Pokemon-inspired capture system? Persona 5, can you be my dad?
You adopt me? I promise I'll be a good little son, Daddy. Come on.
Moving on, we have the Paper Mario series. What makes this series so orgasmic to people is how it handles its combat. Once again, it gets rid of random battles, but it also does one other important thing. You can actually dodge attacks real time and put in specific inputs to perform your attacks. Now this stuff is that god tier shit. The type of shit that makes grandpa look up from reading the local paper and go, yo, that's rad. It completely changes the dynamic of battles. It makes each move feel more personal and interesting. This type of combat is so good. It is used in all Mario RPGs and has even inspired tons of spiritual successors to come out. It's that good. The last game we're going to be talking about today is Octopath Traveler. Now, other than the fact that you have 8 party members that rarely even speak a fucking sentence to each other, you are treated to an incredibly enjoyable battle system. Here, the main gimmick is that you get to break the enemy's attacks. You do this by boosting up your own attacks and unleashing big boy moves on the enemy that stuns them and takes up their turn. But hey, whoa, hold on there, slugger. You can't just boost all willy-nilly. Boosting is something you need to think about and consider because you need to save up boosts to do more damage and you run out based off of how much you use. Some enemies require more boosts than others to break their guard. This means you need to decide if it's more optimal to go in with your attack now or sit back and build up boosts for later. And alongside that, you have these 8 characters who can all do some fun and interesting things with tons of variation. It all comes together to make a fun and unique fighting system. There are so many games that I have left out here that all have unique types of battle systems, and I can go on all day. Because this is what I mean when I say that turn-based combat gets a bad reputation. People automatically assume that every game is just press button and menu and do win, but do not understand that this combat has evolved over years and turned into something truly special nowadays. Honestly, this is shown really well in the relaxing nature they tend to have. Leveling up your parties, going through battles, figuring out weaknesses, fighting insanely creative bosses, it's all so cathartic and chill. Even though I didn't grow up on many JRPGs, playing them still gives me that warm and fuzzy feeling inside. And sure, that may have a lot to do with the stories, the music, or hell, even the graphics. But I think it's more than that. I think the combat has a lot to do with that. Because when it is in the right hands, turn-based combat can be a hell of a lot of fun.